You know what? Let me do this way. Let's say, for the sake of argument, and stay with me here, that Donald Trump is completely 100% innocent and uninvolved in the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing. Never did anything, never saw anything, clean as a whistle. Now, let's say that that same innocent man takes his own former personal defense attorney, a guy who spent years keeping Donald Trump's name out of exactly this type of trouble, and hands him the top law enforcement job in the country. Right as the biggest trafficking cover-up scandal in a generation needs someone to comply with the law, to decide what America gets to see. So if you're building a total normal, nothing to see here government, what's your first move? Because I'm just spitballing. But I feel like the innocent version of this administration puts literally anyone else in the seat as acting attorney general other than Todd Blanche. And before I get to the updates, if you were acting attorney general Todd Blanche and you wanted to prove that Trump had nothing to hide, what's the one thing you would do differently starting tomorrow? Because right now, this guy's entire playbook looks identical to someone who's protecting someone. Let me know in the comments, if you were in his spot, what would you do tomorrow to prove Donald Trump's innocence? But let's actually look what Blanche has actually done since he's gotten that job, especially since there are a lot of new wrinkles coming out in the Epstein story. And I want to get this out there before I get into any of this. Donald Trump has not been charged with anything related to Epstein, and the mere appearance in the files of his name doesn't mean he's guilty of anything. But I want to take you to New Mexico, where New Mexico's Attorney General has been asking Todd Blanche and the DOJ since February for unredacted records connected to Epstein Zorro Ranch outside Santa Fe. You know, the property where new victims and new witnesses and new evidence could actually pop up. That request has now sat for over 130 days. And New Mexico's AG wrote a letter, which was made public this week, calling this delay unreasonable under any rule of reason, and warning that every day of stalling means that witnesses relocate, memories fade, and evidence degrades. In other words, New Mexico's top law enforcement officer is telling the acting attorney general of the United States in writing that his stalling is actively destroying the case against any of the people involved with Epstein. A DOJ spokesperson actually pushed back, saying they already responded in June and that they stand ready to assist, which raises a pretty obvious question. If you're ready to assist, why is New Mexico's own attorney general saying otherwise with a formal letter? And this is the same DOJ that has spent months publicly teasing big transparency push on the Epstein files. Full accounting. Survivors, it's coming, right? That promise has quietly evaporated into scattered, selective leaks that are timed to bury bad news cycles. While one request that could actually identify more victims and more witnesses has sat untouched for over 4 months. And the ranch records, by the way, they're the newest thread in a much bigger quilt here, because there's a lot more going on. Like financial records out of the Virgin Islands, they're showing money moving in potentially previously unnoticed ways. And down in the description, I've got a video linked from the Economic Times, somebody who leans right of center, that breaks down the bank connection. Be sure to watch that after this video. And look, if you take Blanche completely at his word that he is protecting the office of the president and not the president, ask yourself who actually benefits from every single one of these delays. Because it's not the accusers, it's not the survivors, it's not the victims. Every missed deadline, every document that mysteriously stays redacted benefits exactly one group of people: Epstein's old circle of friends, whoever they turn out to be. And this isn't some partisan gotcha either, because people on Trump's own side smell this too. And you know, it started bipartisan. Republican Thomas Massie, who's been pushing alongside Ro-Khanna for transparency on these files. And that's not a normal pairing. That's two guys at the opposite end of the map looking at the same pile of stalling and independently deciding that something smells fishy. And many in this MAGA world, including the podcasters and the bloggers, they've turned on Trump over his handling of the Epstein files. Heck, Epstein survivors, they've started a billboard campaign pressuring senators because apparently that's what it takes now, putting an actual billboard up to get anyone in Washington to do so much as open a filing cabinet. Blanche isn't just slow walking this for Trump, he's slow walking it for everyone else who ever set foot on that ranch, on that plane, or on the island. And every week or every day without those records is another week or day that somebody who should be sweating gets to sleep just fine. Look, you do not need to prove Trump's guilt to make this point. If you run the whole exercise, assuming that he is innocent, the Justice Department's behavior still looks exactly like a cover-up. That's how bad this is. And every day that drags on is another day that survivors who have already relived their trauma once and once again, for investigators to get to wonder whether any of this will ever matter. So subscribe, because I will not let Todd Blanche move on from this one ever.